When did you immigrate to Canada?
I immigrated to Canada in 46, in October 46. I became a Canadian citizen. Today I married Ernie. Therefore I became a stranger in my own country, which was rather weird, but I got an identification card with a big red mark across saying that I was a stranger.
What was it like to be in a foreign country?
I never did leave my parents and relatives. We were very close. And all of a sudden, I realized more and more how bad it was.
Did you like it here when you first came?
No. I was raised in a city, and my parents were extremely good and loving. My brothers too. And it was not quite the same, and I did not speak the language. I could not understand anybody.
How did you manage to get along?
Well, with Ernie, I always used a little dictionary, and I used the main word of that sentence. But I don't know, it did not seem to work that way with a dictionary after I came to Canada. It would have been a big help if some would have been speaking some French. I guess I learned.
Mr. Thompson, what was it like to have a wife who couldn't speak English very well?
It didn't make any difference to me. We seemed to be able to communicate. I felt very sorry for Rita because other people didn't make, there was very few that made any effort to really communicate with her. Now there was one family, the Adaires, that did. They didn't speak French or anything, but they were good friends of mine, my family, before the war, and they really made an effort.
I never will understand how well Doris Adair and I, we could communicate, and yet we could not speak the same language. But somehow I never did quite understand that.
We went back over to Belgium later, one trip with Tom and Doris went with us. And Tom got along great with everybody. He couldn't understand what they were saying, they couldn't understand what he was saying, but everybody liked Tom and he liked everybody else.
I remember we were walking in Bruges, I believe, and Tom was back with Christian van den Ehrenbeem. A lot of hand waving going on, of course, that's how French people are. But I guess Christian was speaking French and Tom was speaking English, and they had a great time, it seems.
Now either you can answer these questions. How did you guys meet?
Oh, I became a hostess for the Canada Club. And I used to go dancing once in a while. And that's where I met Ernie.
And how did you manage to get to that Canada Club?
I was sort of hog-tied. I didn't go into Brussels very often except if I needed some film I had lots of things to do with the barracks. At that time, we were living in a convent. All of us troops. We were on the first 2 floors, and the nuns and so on were on the next 2 floors. The guys came back from town and they said, "Oh, you gotta go, you gotta go. We found a real good place." So the next night they really put it on me. I had to go to town. So I went. Went right to the Canada Club, and there was we. After a dance, we had a couple of dances.
We could
Met
not speak to one
No.
another, smile, and that's about
We
it.
met a few nights later and went for a walk, and it took all that evening to find out how to say each other's name. I was known as Tommy all through the war. So was both my brothers. But so she knew me as Tommy. But the way she said Rita, I couldn't understand what it was until she wrote it out.
When did you guys get married?
On the 27th of April in 1946.
How old were you?
I was 23 and a half.
I was 24.
And were you married in Europe or Canada?
We were married in Brussels, in Belgium. We were married first at the City Hall, and then we went to the church, and the priest asked questions in English to Ernie and in French to me.
Hubert did part of this ceremony. Her brother did perform part of the ceremony.
Okay, do you guys have any memories or stories you'd like to share of the war, or after you came back home, or?
Well, after I went to see the Germans, and I knew I did not have to go to work in Germany, I stayed with the Belgian government. At first, I was there as a bénévole, that not being paid, just wrap parcels to be sent to Belgian prisoners in Belgium. There were a few girls working there who were in the same boat I was in. Then I got lucky and I went to work for the Belgian government in the taxation part. I also at one time had 3 girls working for me at home, and after the office I had to work all night, sometimes until midnight, and after that to prepare enough sewing for the girls to do while I was at work during the day.
Would you like to tell us any humorous stories about when you came here, when you first got here?
Yes, I became pregnant with Michelle right away, and I was doing my best to learn how to cook, but I could not understand recipes, and one time Ernie was working in the field and I could not understand something very well, so I went over one fence in a pasture. I was supposed to reach another fence, but there were 3 horses at the end of the pasture, and as soon as I got there, they turned around and looked at me and they came running, so I went back too afraid of horses. Also, later on, I thought I would gather the eggs in the chicken house, but rooster came,
Chased her out.
flew right at my leg. That was it.
That was the end of that.
That was the end of that, and then also was going to learn how to milk cows. And Ernie apparently had quite a cow there in the barn, and he put the pail under, and she turned around and looked at me and kicked the pail, and that was it too. Also, there were pigs running loose in the yard, and when I had to go to the outdoor toilet, I always made sure the pigs were gone so I could walk. One time I was in the, what you call it, the toilet, and I could hear the pigs around, so I was there for quite a while.
Well, thank you both very much for taking the time to do this interview with me. I really appreciate it.
You are very welcome.
Yeah, you sure are.